Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Smudcast number 641. Why are Western adult cartoons so childish? A history. This is going to be fun. This is a topic I sort of knew as I grew up in the 80s and the 90s, and I watched as cartoons matured in the 90s, and then kind of sort of didn't stop maturing, just weren't as prolific as they used to be. Anyway, this is from Fionapollo, a YouTuber with about 25,000 subs. This video came out on, March the 3rd, not too long ago. So has almost 240,000 views, so she must have done some good homework here. Or she's appealing to some crazy crowd with her opinions, and we know who that crowd is. Who knows? I haven't heard of her. I haven't watched any of her videos. We are going to find out. So this is a 26.5-minute video. Probably not going to be able to sit through it all, but we will try to get through it. And if we like her, we're going to keep going with watching her probably tomorrow if we have the time. Or if we just can't stand her, we're just going to cut it short and call it a day. That's what happens, unfortunately.
From the kind of YouTubers we have seen so far, I wouldn't put it aside to say that maybe this is going to be like a one-time viewing.
You never know. This is a topic of conversation I had back in high school in the 90s, and we were talking about how, the in terms of maturity, like the maturity of the story, not the quality of the writing per se, but in terms of the themes of maturity or mature themes, like with adult stories, I would say Gargoyles was number one. Number two, and I think tied with number two, was Spider-Man and X-Men. They were sort of the same level of like soap opera slash
Batman.
I would call none of these adult cartoons. I would just call them mature cartoons for children.
They were mature, yes. Batman was...
An adult cartoon is what I would call Gone with the Wind. Gone with the Wind.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I'm trying to remember if there was a Gone with the Wind cartoon.
I'm mistaking the title. The British one about the being hit by a nuclear bomb, and you had this old couple that was a very slow movie.
But it was a movie.
Yes.
Okay, I was thinking of like Saturday morning cartoons after school, that sort of thing. So, but yeah, Batman would definitely be up there. Batman had a lot of just sort of one-off, weird, goofy stories, but they had a lot of good ones too. It was like up and down a lot because they had a lot of writers and a lot of different budgets. So it matured or changed rather as the story went on.
Oh no, it wasn't Gone with the Wind. What's the name of that movie?
Well, I don't know. Like, if she's gonna have a history, I'm gonna hope she goes to the '80s. So all the goofy stuff like He-Man and She-Ra and Jem and the Holograms and G.I. Joe, all that fun stuff. And then we see the 90s come about with 3D stuff. We get the Beast Wars coming late 90s, early 2000s. So there's all kinds of good stories out there.
When the Wind Blows is the movie I meant.
It's a movie. Okay, cool. When
the Wind Blows.
Awesome. I would definitely say the movie for Mask of the Phantasm was pretty mature. So there's
it was amazing.
All kinds of great stories out there that are animated in the 80s and 90s. And even Transformers in the 80s was pretty wild. So anyway, we already have a donation. Let's read that out, and then we'll get on with the video. The Carolina Clap. Alrighty, thank you, sir. The reason is simple. Most of these people making new adult cartoons are Nepo babies or diversity hires who use the show as a group therapy session rather than a show. Example, High Guardian Spice, Velma, Rick and Morty, which I have renamed Dick and Farty. Okay. Yeah, I haven't
High Guardian Spice an adult cartoon? It's the same. These things are all more or less the same, but High Guardian Spice was very childish.
Okay.
It was just completely off tone when all out of this. So there's this violence didn't have much of an effect unless it's a bad guy. Then you suddenly had fully animated headshots with arrows.
Well, there were some, I guess, moments when you look at Steven Universe as a whole. Like, it starts off goofy and silly, and then it goes into serious ideas and let's be friends, let's hug it out, let's have a family unit or whatever they want to do at the end of the story. So you could say it matured, but I wouldn't say that the storytelling was indicative of these mature adult themes.
Steven Universe was never mature.
I would say
It
got
also never
smarter.
matured. That the whole hug it out is that's a theme from beginning to end, and it is in the most surreal way possible.
I see.
It's the most tropish way to do it, to the point where it's like it's satire of itself.
Of itself. Okay. That's an interesting way of putting it.
You can't take Steven Universe serious. It's you have to be deranged to do that.
Okay. Anyway, let's get on with this. I can't wait to hear what she has to say, and I like revisiting my childhood, so it's always fun for me. Let's go.
Brace for impact.
Hey guys, Fionapollo and I do art commentary, and today I considered doing a video exclusively on the trash fire show that is Velma, but as I kept mocking up my script, it didn't really feel like I was saying anything that hadn't already been said 100 times over by other YouTubers. The humour is lowbrow, it talks down to its audience, the characters have been distorted into...
Honey, what the devil are you drawing? Like it's 3 lines. What?
It's an eye. It's obviously an eye.
It's like, oh, we gotta get it perfectly right. Like, okay.
Well, you can... gang, since the gang is supposed to be the whole gist of what was bugging me about the whole situation around this show, and it didn't really help to satiate my growing feelings on what led to it becoming the kind of show that it is. But what kind of show is it? Well, it's an adult animated series, but what does that even mean nowadays? If you ask someone what adult animation entails in the modern day, they'll probably tell you that it involves a lot of toilet humor, innuendos, violence, and other stuff to that degree. And they're not wrong, that's a pretty big chunk of what you can expect from shows like Rick and Morty and Family Guy, but how did...
Yeah, which is personally not what I call adult humor. That's just, I'd call that juvenile humor.
Lots of swearing, lots of weird cuts.
Yeah, toilet humor is not what I consider adult humor. Adult humor is what I consider to be more sophisticated and subtle.
All right, here is Kilgris's...
situational issues and such.
Here's Kilgris's Hideout donation. Thank you, sir. In the U.S., adult cartoon is its own genre, consisting of things like Simpsons, Family Guy, South Park, etc. It doesn't mean mature stuff, just extreme content.
I have to completely agree with Kyogre's hideout, because that's exactly how I see it as well. There's adult and children entertainment, and that's the only 2 binaries that I believe in.
Okay, then that explains why... Maybe that explains why
the
adults
atomic
are...
bombs were dropped on Japan, yes.
Yep. No, I mean, I think that's maybe that's why the adults now are just like perpetual juveniles. If this is considered adult,
I see what you mean. Okay, if Seth Green stuff and South Park stuff is considered mature, yeah.
It doesn't fit in children's entertainment. That's how I see it. Yes.
Yeah, that is right. But then I'd rather open up the category of children, juvenile, and adult. And not just have children and adult, because then we have this weird thing in between that doesn't fit either.
Yeah, but we have like stuff like Adult Swim that's changed over the years, and went from like Aqua Teen Hunger Force. I remember that to what the hell they got nowadays?
Smiling Friends. I think that's the only good one.
I've heard of that. I just haven't watched it. I don't know about it.
If you like flash animations and jokes like from the 2000s, then you're gonna love it.
Oh,
that's all I'm gonna say.
All right. Well, they had like anime on Adult Swim. I know that, but
yeah,
I don't know what else you'd watch on that show. Maybe South Park is on there. I have no idea. Couldn't tell you.
That was Comedy Central.
Yeah, you're probably right. Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's go.
Why is that what we think of when we imagine something? So many beautiful and emotionally moving shows like Primal, BoJack Horseman, and Castlevania that break this mold. It's such a vexing irony considering the seemingly never-ending and incessantly annoying bias from people that animation is only for children. Oftentimes in my eyes, it feels like adult animation is more immature and childish than cartoons intended for this perceived demographic. I have a slight theory going on in my head that this might be due to the fact that adult animation is in fact trying to cater to children, more specifically teens, in an attempt to pull in a more dedicated viewer base that thrives on shock value without having to actually admit that. It would certainly explain why some shows like South Park and Velma take place in schools. Whether this is true, I have no idea. It's just a game theory, but that's why we're going to do some research and see if we can find out. So today, I'm going to discuss the history of adult cartoons, what they consist of in the present day, and where they might be headed in the future. Please note that while I do try to link all of my research, a lot of what I say in my videos is purely speculative and not based in fact, unless evidence is given to state otherwise. And if you like what you're hearing, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.
That's a very weird thing to say. Here's all my research. By the way, this is only my opinion. Okay.
You know what? At least like this person comes out straight that this is like maybe it's gonna be bullshit. So like don't take me on my word. It's at least like it's not claiming it as fact like Maggie May Fish.
Oh.
Yeah, it's I'd say it's the honest YouTube disclaimer of I am self-aware that I'm just trying my best.
Yeah.
Sorry if I mess up. It's
Usually when you get research, it's kind of like you just state it as fact because you don't have to bother interpreting it. It's pretty obvious, but she's gonna add her flavor to it. I'm like, okay, that's fine. I'm always disappointed by that, but okay, nothing new.
Yeah. Castlevania's just pretentiously
Little
badly
theory.
written.
Do you think I'm right? Am I overthinking things again? Most likely, but it's fun to talk about, so who cares?
Examples for adult humor, and that's going outside of animation. Monty Python's Flying Circus and Yes Minister. That's what I would put into that in the English productions. The German example would be Loriot, who, that kind of humor has died out in Germany. It's kind of you can put it into people compare it to Monty Python, but it's just even more dry. The absurdity is more subtle between the lines. But that's what I associate with adult humor. It's not in your face with laughs and potty language all the time, because it doesn't need that. It's more intelligent humor that you don't see in this stuff. You have in things like Drawn Together and South Park and Family Guy, American Dad. You have these. You have some societal critique that is sort of intelligent, that's making fun of it, that's shining a light on it from several angles. But the humor itself is not too smart. Most of the humor is petty. You have the occasional smart character in it. Like in Family Guy, that's Stewie and I forgot the name of the dog.
Brian.
Yeah, they play that level of more dry adult humor, somewhat more. And The Simpsons, especially, who stands out is Sideshow Bob, and that's even when in the episode where it's revealed how he was cast, how he got the job at Krusty's show. Krusty explains that this is the humor he wants. He doesn't want the cringe clown, which was his brother, Melvin, I think was his name. And he wanted the job, but he didn't get it because it just wasn't funny. While Sideshow Bob had this quiet dignity about him that he kept even through a hilarious situation. And that is more in the lines of adult humor.
Well, I think it's a style of the animation in the West. It's not sort of, hey, let's just do whatever we want. It's sort of geared towards humor. It's geared towards either mature humor or humor for kids, and that's it. There's no range. There's no, like I'm trying to remember, like, whoa.
Oh, sorry.
So,
What have you done, Smud?
that was just me. I thought there was some bomb going off. Lighting up.
Justin is after you.
Well, look, GigaChat said in the chat that he's in my peripheral vision, so maybe it's something to do with that.
All right. I was gonna mention, was it Comedy Network back in the 90s. The only thing animated I remember was Dr. Katz, which was this weird this guy who played a psychologist or something, or a psychiatrist. It was on for like so many years. Like, how does this show get on for so long? I never understood that. And it was adult humor, but it was made for laughs, and it was written by a comedian. So it's stuff like that. Like, you see a comedian comes out with a comedy special, like Bill Burr will have his own show. So it does happen, but I think that's just the nature of comedy and what these creative types can do. Say, okay, I have an idea for a show, and oh, you're Bill Burr, you're a great comedian, you must have a great ideas, will make a lot of money. So they give him the green light, and that's why they allow that. Whereas a no-name guy, like maybe Seinfeld, if he got creative later in life, he goes, oh, I could do a cartoon too. That might work. Who knows? But it's very rare. So
I think my problem is that there's these two types that are humor not for children, which is, on the one side, it's the stuff that is always piss, shit, burps, sex, and the other is intelligent humor, and both are mixed into this term of adult or mature humor, and they're they're so different directions that I don't consider this lowbrow stuff as adult. Maybe I'm too far up in the clouds and arrogant about that, but in part it just doesn't work for me.
That's very cool. Let's move on.
okay.
Okay.
Part 1, the Hays Code. In order to
wow.
understand adult animation, let's take a look into the history of animation as a whole. We also need to understand that cartoons and animation being a children's medium is also a fairly recent speculation, and that the events leading up to its current state were more so a byproduct of multiple instances within the film industry at large. And to figure out why this came about, we need to take a look at the Hays Code. The Motion Picture Production Code, or Hays Code for short, was a set of industry guidelines for the self-censorship of content that was applied to most motion pictures released by major studios in the United States from 1934 to 1968. The code was dubbed after the president of the Motion Picture Producers and Distributors of America, William Hays. The reason this code was brought into effect was because Hollywood and the film industry at the time were racked with scandals that were being widely condemned by more and more organizations, as well as the general public. There were allegations of gross misconduct, SA, and so many other heinous things going on, to the point where around 37 separate states imposed hundreds of their own decency laws before the code came into effect. And while we may now see things like moral corruption as just kind of the norm with Hollywood and being pretty impossible to contain, back then the industry wasn't anywhere near the giant that it is today. So these
it never stopped. They just stopped making movies like that for a while. So it's just pushed beneath the surface out of the products.
kinds of scandals were really starting to hammer away at its reputation, so lawmakers and executives sought to nip this in the bud as best they could. Coming around to animation specifically, when cartoons were first becoming popularized in the 1920s, they were primarily viewed by adult moviegoers and were shown to these audiences as short, silly clips as a way to get people settled before the main live-action film. You'll notice that this tradition never really went away. I think we all know of at least one Disney or Pixar short that we saw when we were going to the cinema in our childhoods. But when it came to these shorts in the 1920s, there wasn't really a fully set out standard for what could or couldn't be shown on screen yet. And this resulted in all manner of dark, inappropriate, and frankly shock value cartoons to be made, which included the use of drinking, which was illegal in America at this time by the way, heavy drug use, and a lot of not so subtle sexual references. This was also enforced by the fact that family movies weren't really the norm yet, so these cartoons could be showcased to adult audiences even during a time that was considered much more outwardly prude by today's standards, because children didn't have such easy access to them as much as they do today. I believe that in the beginning, because these cartoons were a relatively new thing and also didn't focus on real people struggled to find the line between what should and shouldn't be acceptable because the art styles, plots, and actions of the characters were just so wacky that people weren't really able to suspend belief enough to apply it to the actions of real people. And this debate is still pretty alive and strong in many ways today with things like anime, even if the discussion around it may have morphed considerably. It was only in 1937, with the release of Disney's Snow White, did people start to view cartoons cartoon characters as having the potential to depict more realistic persons, and it wasn't until 1930 to 1934 where these cartoons were gaining a reputation for being particularly raunchy, in addition to Hollywood's multitude of scandals, that the Hays Code was finally brought into effect. The Hays Code, when it was first introduced, was taken extremely seriously, and it pretty much put a stop to everything that encapsulated cartoons of the era before it was brought in, which is now referred to as the pre-code era. Though again, just bear in mind that this is only related to large industries within Hollywood, such as Warner Brothers at the time. Things like indie animation or animation not produced in the United States could still get away with a few things, up to a certain point. American filmmakers did also find ways around the code via subtext. For example, intercourse was obviously a no-go, but to illustrate that the act took place, you would often see a female character reapplying her makeup and a male character smoking a cigarette. That said, the Hays Code did ban many things from being explicitly depicted, including profanity, insulting Christianity, and any licentious or suggestive nudity, even in the form of silhouettes. It was a time when things truly began to be restricted visually, but by that same token, the Hays Code era is when people started to create films that were much more emotionally intelligent and had the beginnings of a consistent narrative. This is when flagship characters and shows such as Mickey Mouse, Looney Tunes, and Tom and Jerry hit their stride and became so popular as to stand the test of time. These cartoons, in addition to the release of Snow White, is where the idea that animation could be for both children and adults.
Yeah, but they were extremely violent. So, beating someone over the head with a mallet is funny because his head doesn't explode realistically, but that's just cartoons. So if you're saying all the cartoons are rabbits and creatures and other anthropomorphic ideas that don't explode, you think they would, that's fine. It's still violent. It's still like you're still attacking another living thing with a weapon, whether it's a stick of dynamite or a shotgun or whatever. It's just depicted in a fun, silly way. So,
well, that's the point of slapstick. It's all about Schadenfreude.
Yeah, you're saying, oh, it's more sophisticated, it's more mature. No, they're beating each other over the head with fake weapons to make it look funny. So, I don't know if that's.
But the other things that you mentioned, while I do agree with Chad, the Hays Code did impede on creativity in one way, but these restrictions at the same time led to creative solutions in another. And Hollywood couldn't rely as much on just, let's show raunchy scenes.
Right. But
like they do today. Like the equivalent would be the Michael Bay movie that solely relies on explosions.
Right. But that's like, imagine there was a Michael Bay code. Like you can't have 5 or 4 explosions within the matter of 5 seconds, right? You could be too much. It's like, well, why?
Per minute. Let's go per minute.
Whatever the rule would be. Like, that's stupid. You imagine telling writers, hey, you can't write Harlequin romances because it's too much. It's too much sex and TNA. It's like, well, women are going to want to read them anyway. They're going to find people that write them elsewhere. So all these restrictions, like it's very simple. Back in the day, there weren't that many options. So if all you got was raunchy stuff, you might be, well, that's weird. That's not what I want. Nowadays, you don't need these rules, and the rules don't stop you anyway. So it's kind of irrelevant. These rules don't affect creators anymore, especially with the internet. So for its time, it makes sense. But bringing this up is kind of irrelevant when you're talking about Western adult cartoons today. If you look at Ren and Stimpy, they didn't give a shit. They didn't care.
That's not a kid's cartoon. Definitely not.
Well, yeah, but they're adult. Like we're talking about adult cartoons, right? So.
Mm-hmm.
So that would fall under adult cartoons. There's all kinds of different variations of that. So I don't think bringing up the Hays Code from the 60s or whatever it came about, or even later, or before rather, is relevant.
30s, I believe.
30s, yeah.
This became recognized. Used more and more as a way to was especially the case during the 1940s when Disney's propaganda cartoons encouraged families to contribute to the war effort during World War II. Though even with this becoming more of an accepted idea, it was still widely viewed that cartoons were skewed towards adult audiences due to the sheer amount of unsuitable contents within them that people believed weren't good for children. And then came the 1950s when various antitrust laws came into effect, which more or less ended up slashing budgets for film and animation, with animation being one of the departments worst hit by this. Because of these laws, cartoons became far too expensive to produce in the same way they had been previously, and so they adapted into what we now know as limited animation, which is where animation frames were looped and recycled constantly, and character poses were now held for longer periods of time on screen, and only certain parts of a character would be moving in a given shot. For example, only a character's mouth would be moving during a dialogue scene. You can even see this being done in Disney films of the time, the most prominent example being Robin Hood's Maid Marian dance being reused in the film The Aristocats. And for the most part, this was adopted for children's animation more so because it was a safer bet that guaranteed the shows wouldn't be cancelled. The rise of children-centered media was also aided by the rise in mass-produced television sets that could now be found in everyday households, which coincidentally also gave rise to the Saturday morning children's cartoon formula. So this is definitely something that we still see today. A lot of young children's animation is very quote-unquote low effort and utilizes a variety of time-saving techniques. We see this today in shows like Peppa Pig and Dora the Explorer especially, where puppet animation is used to save on frame drawing in order to make use of the limited time given to complete episodes. It also helps that young children are generally less picky when it comes to the content they consume, or rather, the correct phrasing is probably they don't really get a say in it and will just watch whatever their parents leave them with. The enforcement of these laws in the 50s is generally where this trend of deliberately only catering to children began, though there were some cartoons such as the Flintstones that attempted to break this mold by adopting a sitcom-style method of storytelling that appealed to all ages, and even went as far as to depict Fred and Wilma in bed together, and even showed Wilma pregnant, which were things that had been pretty much outlawed during the Hays Code's reign. But by this point, people were starting to ignore the code until it largely just stopped being enforced. Though, sadly, the Flintstones declined in popularity in its final years, and many referred to this as the death of adult-oriented animation. And for a substantial amount of time after, this was indeed the case, and Saturday morning kids cartoons pretty much dominated the medium. So that's where we're going to cap off our little history lesson for a moment, but what we can see from this is that while adult animation in modern day might seem very wacky and out there and ridiculous, this pretty much lines it up with what it was like during its formative years.
This was a waste of time. This was not necessary. We did not need to hear that if we're talking about cartoons now. It means nothing. She should have done her homework, said, hey, this was not relevant to this topic. I'm going to keep going. And done even more research in the 80s and 90s. This is not...
Yeah, I feel like it was way too long-winded
just
conversation.
Just have it 2 minutes. Hays Code was this. Disney did this. Hanna-Barbera did that. And this is what happened. That was mature back then. Today, maturity is this. And it's like, oh, okay, great. Not 10 or 8 or 9 minutes of this. That was pointless.
So all this comes down to that, like, because of like today's cartoons roots come all the way back to the 40s and 50s, because like they had to cut down the budget so they look childish now. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Good to know.
The 1920s. All we've really done is come full circle. Demographic of people today who claim that animation is for children were the exact group that grew up in the 1950s onwards with Saturday morning cartoons as the only real representation of animation that they had consistent access to. So of course they're going to think that, because it's all they've ever known. And to them, it's the act of making cartoons for more adult audiences which is the new invention. Life really is just swings and roundabouts, isn't it? The other big issue with this though is that these same adults who think this now take up the majority of film and TV executive positions who get the final say on what shows get greenlit. And many of them still also refer heavily to certain rules outlined in the Hays Code. Anyway, let's pick things back up with how adult animation experienced a revival both before and after streaming services came about, starting with the 1980s. Part 2. MTV and the rise of streaming.
In the 80s?
So it looked like the adult era of animation had been lost after the Flintstones reached its end in 1966, and Saturday morning cartoons came out on top, causing a cultural shift in the perception of animation and its place in the world of entertainment. And while we did get many great shows even during this era like Scooby-Doo, this perception of a strictly children's medium has persisted in people's minds who grew up during this time, which is now commonly referred to as the animation dark ages. But then in 1981, something happened. The music television channel, more commonly known as MTV, came about and allowed adult animation to get its foot in the door again after all this time. The channel's creative director Fred Siebert equated the medium as being the closest visual representation to rock and roll, and had a pretty clear vision for how he wanted it to be incorporated. This ended up making big waves for both the adults who grew up on TV shows like Looney Tunes that the channel took inspiration from, as well as with the younger generation who enjoyed the music videos shown on MTV itself that also utilized animation in bold and refreshing ways. This is when we started to see music videos like Take On Me effectively become pop culture cornerstones of the medium. Following this renewed and positive intrigue towards animation, in 1989, The Simpsons aired on television, and oh boy, this show had a massive hand in invigorating people's interest in the medium thanks to a focus on pop culture references, combined with the sitcom tropes not seen since the Flintstones, and became a true mainstay. While this sounds like a very tired trope nowadays, this had only really been attempted by the Flintstones at this point, so it was pretty new and exciting at the time. The Simpsons actually came as a big shock to audiences due to its frequent story.
Right, this is going nowhere, guys. I don't know what the hell she's trying. She's giving us a history lesson. I'm like, that's great. What's your point? You don't need this much background.
How about we...
I'm lost.
How about we skip to the next chapter, which is at 16:30. Yeah.
Okay, before we do that, let me just read some super chats so I don't kill myself here.
Oh my god.
Okay, so here's from Kyogress's Hideout. Hey, Kyogress, how are you? In the U.S. adult cartoon, it is its own genre consisting of things like Simpsons, Family Guy, South Park. It doesn't mean mature stuff, just extreme content. I think we read that already. The Hays Code history lesson is relevant because she was using the Hays Code as a setup to explain where the stigma came from about cartoons are just for kids. Yeah, if you want to do that, take 30 seconds, take 40 seconds to explain that. Not 9 minutes. That was a big waste of time. I don't need the history of everything. That was, and now she's still going on. So anyway, let's skip ahead to what's a good point? Let's see.
Mark.
16
something.
Yeah. What have they become? 1631. Okay, here we go. Like, I could do my own research, it's fine, but I want your premise, I want your background, and then just get on with it. Oh, this is taking its jolly sweet time. There we go.
Okay.
There we are. Finally.
What have they become? So, like with many of my videos, I put out a few posts asking people what reputation they thought adult cartoons had and why they think this is the case. It was a pretty overwhelming opinion that people thought adult cartoons contained a lot of edgy humor, shock value, and were cramming in tons of inappropriate themes that were only really adult in name, without any of the nuanced discussion or depth that shows like The Simpsons or BoJack embodied, leading them to be this kind of caricature of what an adult show should be. People didn't seem especially taken by the art style that's become synonymous with many of these shows either. A decent number of people described them as ugly, and quite a few equated all of this to adult cartoons feeling like an edgy teenager's interpretation of what adult cartoons should be. They're edgy and shocking for the sake of being edgy and shocking, and I genuinely think it's because the writers on animated adult shows hate animation and think it's for babies, and are trying too hard to subvert that expectation instead of actually making a good story. When the writers actually respect animation as a medium, you get gems like Arcane and Cyberpunk Edge Runners.
Okay, but that has nothing to do with the art quality. What are you talking about?
Yeah, well, it's about the humor, and I would generally agree with this. This comment.
Writers don't need to care about the quality of the animation or the style. Or
No. It's not. It's not talking about the animation, but the quality of the animation, but animation as a medium for not kids.
But
when they don't because when the argument is that those people who work in animation or who write for animated media, if they don't respect animated media as a thing in itself and think it's just petty crap for kids, then they write it in shit ways.
That's ridiculous.
And in this extreme humor.
That's ridiculous. No, I there's no way a writer goes, gee, I wish this was live action. Oh, we're doing animation. Like, no. A writer would be like, oh my God, I'm going to be a writer? I'm going to write for this? That's
the parallel would be people who want to be real journalists but are stuck in games journalism and hate video games. Then the question is, why did you start working in animation?
I can't imagine this. I can't imagine a writer being this weird.
Yeah.
if they want to.
I rather think what's more true is that the people who make these things never grew up themselves and just they want to make cartoons, but they also want to put in the kind of humor that gets them going at their current age.
I think this comes down to just having a good writer in the first place. Whether they respect the medium is almost like I don't care if I'm writing for a hardcover or a soft cover, a digital. It's going to produce into a film. Like that's irrelevant to the writer. They don't care.
Right. I think the problem we had in the past with all these woke remakes of cartoons was rather that the writers did not respect the original material, so the brand or the franchise. It wasn't about not respecting animation as a whole.
That is a lore or adaptation argument. This is like when people say stuff like this, they haven't thought it through. They're just saying, oh, if I'm a writer, you should respect the format. Of course you should respect the format, but you're not like describing a scenario that's so complicated that someone has to animate. Like, oh my God, this is going to blow the budget if you have this crazy scene. No writer is like, oh yeah, I'm going to completely piss off all the animators and the keyframers. I'm going to annoy the shit. It's like, no, they're not going to do that. They'll be told, we can't physically do that, buddy. It's going to take too long. They will adapt as a writer because it's the cheapest thing to do in a production as opposed to pissing off everyone. I don't see how this is practical or an intelligent or experienced opinion because they don't respect the medium. I think everyone who gets a job, who's on a team, respects the other person doing their side of the job, even if they don't understand it. That's kind of a given. I just don't see this. When I speak to writers, they're like, oh, this was actually produced. This was made. This was published. They're thrilled to have their work out there. That's how you get props. That's how you get your name out there. So unless it's like some argument about not understanding the medium and how it works, I don't know. I see these bad stories in animation. It's not about the animator's fault. It's not the fact that the writers didn't respect the animator or the medium. It's that they suck at writing and they don't know how to tell a good story. So anyway.
Yeah.
Why are these people employed?
There you go. How do they get hired?
Agenda.
Most of them just writing and coat it all with a lot of edgy humor, innuendos, etc. Like, about half of adult animated shows from the past decade or so are literally just copies of Family Guy, and even that show is kinda overrated. Every show is a clone of whatever show is the main popular one. Heck, even I thought that Inside Job, which is one of my favorite shows, was just a Rick and Morty clone when it first came out, before I actually looked into it at all. I think that one period of time where everything was trying to be the new Family Guy has kinda put a hole in the side of the proverbial boat for a lot of folks. I just hope that whatever new stuff comes out next can repair that boat hole. I'm gonna link all of my posts in the description so that you can read the answers for yourself. There are some pretty good ones. There were a lot this time around as well, but overall, the opinion was pretty low. People don't seem to like these kinds of cartoons. But why? To kick this off, as we said in an earlier section, not much has actually changed content-wise from when animation was first gaining notoriety in the 1920s. Things just kinda came back around to being acceptable again after a long period of heavy censorship. But what has changed seems to be people's attitudes. I'm not going to say that people were more accepting of this stuff back in the 20s because that might not necessarily be true, otherwise why would the Hays Code have been introduced in the first place? And to think that would also have to imply that a lot of the stuff being shown in the 1920s cartoons was okay to begin with, and a lot of it just wasn't. There is not a cat in hell's chance that Betty Boop could be made today without being unrecognizable.
It's fine. What? Of course you can. There's no problem. What's wrong with making Betty Boop? Yeah, it'll believe a culture shock. You're talking about a flapper back in the day. You might have to retool that for, I don't know, a Twitch streamer or something. I don't know what that would be, the relevant approximation.
What about like Pantheon's talking with God? Well, that's like
yeah, but that's anime.
That's anime.
If we're going for the profanity.
She's explicitly talking about Western animation. And I think the question is why is Western animation not trying to learn from Japan in that regard, that you can make actual mature animation. And
because then
we
you
can...
have a high Guardian spice.
Yeah, but I mean, oh God.
Well, the closest
I mean, we could do a smut talk where we just go through presenting 20 good or notable, or even somewhat flawed, mature, adult, whatever you want to call it, anime, whether it's movies, whether it's series, from Spriggan to the Count of Monte Cristo version, Golgo 13, all of that stuff. This is all. There's so much of that is not made for kids. It's not targeted at kids, and it's the way it's made for adults. Is not in this potty humor style.
All right.
And why is the West not doing that? That's my question.
Let me read the super chat from Threadnut. Thank you, sir, for the £10. She reminds me of my last date. Oh, boy. She kept rambling about nothing for an hour, and at the end asked me what I thought. I shouldn't have told her. I just wanted to go to bed. She slapped my headache worse.
Oh dear.
God.
Leave her.
That's in the non-physical way. She slapped your headache worse.
I think it sounds very physical. So yeah, that's not girlfriend material. That's just a narcissist.
Or just a lady who's really lonely. But anyway.
I mean, if you're into Latinos, this is a perfect opportunity.
Yeah, but then you need that same kind of fire, and then you need to slap each other until you start embracing yourself.
Yeah, maybe she's into that. Yeah.
Slaps you with a chunkla.
Okay.
I think you need to have that temperament naturally, otherwise it's just gonna burn you out.
Okay.
And then that's not working long term.
Adios, mío.
Anyway, 19
What
minutes.
the chunkla's for.
We're almost done. We got 7 minutes left.
I think it's a similar internet first came about. In the say whatever they wanted with this newfound freedom. I guess
was
with
cool.
that in mind, just saying attitudes and leaving it at that is a bit too vague. It's probably more so the freedom to express those attitudes that was lacking. But obviously, as time went on, things started to get out of hand, and now, even with certain terms and conditions in place online, we still have a ridiculous amount of threats, harassment, bullying, and so much more going on with online communities. And it's a similar thing with adult animated shows. I definitely
Really?
think that some of them are continually trying to push the boundaries and see just how much they can get away with, not for the betterment of the shows, but because they know that outrage marketing can bring in just as much attention to your show as opposed to the show being actually good. But either way, there are a few reasons.
Did you see the beginning of this picture? She had all these colors, these bright greens and whatever, and now it's just drop shadow, light drop shadow. It's all faded out. What are you doing, honey? Anyway.
Her workflow is kind of strange, but I guess like she's insecure about like these things, and she's just learning this thing from the start. So
Guess it's all black and white. It's like, okay, you just killed all the color. Like, anyway.
yeah.
I'd like as to why I think it feels like every proclaimed adult show is just a clone of Family Guy or Rick and Morty right now. The first, and in my opinion the most important, is that despite people's efforts, animation is still being seen as a genre instead of a medium, even by the people who are fans of it. And if you look at the majority of cartoon series that emulate the raunchy, inappropriate, bombastic series that came before,
I've never heard people make that confusion before, but okay, maybe some people don't know what they're talking about. Might.
to consider what genre specifically they all being animated, and while yes, a lot of them have their own genres like sci-fi, drama, and the like, for the most part we'll focus on sitcoms since that's what the majority of them are, but that's why they all look and behave the same way, because what you're actually looking at is a genre within a medium.
So you just said it was the same genre, so they all behave the same way, so why are you surprised? That's... This episodic story, just like all these other episodic stories, like, yeah, thanks. It's great. They happen to be animated. Very, very good. Okay. If they're serialized...
I'm animated.
Yeah, it's like, look at, what was the Rick and Morty clones, like the Star Trek one. Lower Decks.
Yeah. Oh Lord.
Yeah, it's just Rick and Morty in Star Trek world. So the adaptation argument's thrown out the door because they're adapting the lore very loosely and then doing their own thing. So a lot of people are like pissed off because it's not Star Trek. They're just using a Star Trek veneer and doing Rick and Morty.
I'd rather watch another isekai because there would at least be a new world.
A new fantasy potential game.
A new world order.
Let's just focus on all of the ones that are all the same. Like, okay, fine. I guess I thought she was going to talk about the like Edge Runners or Castlevania, where they take an existing thing, they make it new, or they revitalize it in a different format. Like no one was expecting Castlevania to be an animated show. No one was expecting per se a miniseries out of League of Legends, but they did it, and people liked it, and that's great. It was mature. It had all these other elements of themes that were mature. So that is what I was hoping she was going for. Now she's just saying, let's talk about the sitcoms. And you're like, okay, sure.
I would rather guess that the stigma that animation is just for children is a thing that parents in the 90s still had, and Ego Dreamer mentions that's a stigma mentality from US producers.
Maybe.
That can also be the case.
Not nowadays. Nowadays you got kids growing up on streaming services like Disney Plus and all that. There's just so much to watch. There's so many things for kids, and they have so much CGI, like live action with actors.
Yeah, but what of that is animation for like not kids?
Some of it is, but most of it's for kids. So if you go to like age groups 4 to 6, there's 7 to 9, there's all these other dimensions, and it's all geared to kids, all geared to training or teaching or dancing.
That's my point. That is my point. What is the animation not for kids?
I don't know yet. She hasn't told us.
You can't even argue gargoyles.
No.
Yeah, maybe we skipped over that period of time for animation.
I think it's rather gotten with the all the potty humor. It's rather gotten more. Well, infantile is the wrong word, but less sophisticated, because even the original DuckTales show had, I'd say, more honest and watchable by adults. Themes, execution, and humor. There was that despite being DuckTales, it was more serious. When all this stuff now you have this pretentious pseudo-philosophical crap intermingled with sex jokes.
Well, even look at Chippendale. That was Rescue Rangers. That was a joke. The movie they made of it. The
animation movie, that we don't talk about that.
That was just like, why would you take something that was just a simple, cute cartoon and just retard it into some adult fourth wall thing? It was so silly to even try that. As opposed to just making a cute 3D Chippendale show for kids. That would have been fine. That would have been great. But they decided not to do it. Anyway, talking about potty humor, his sphincter cell gay ass theory. That's great. I'm sorry.
See a doctor.
See a stealth agent. I'm sorry, but if you bitch and moan about death threats on the internet, you should consider taste testing all the different chemicals under your sink. Also, holy shit, can this woman get to the point? I'm about to start a pistol.
Okay, calm down, Kurt Cobain. We already went through this one.
Yeah, no, she has a bad case of ramble, and it's...
She's a woman. Come on, we can't let that one pass.
Oh,
She's just like unstructured rambling.
Look, she's not neuralities. Everything's fine.
Well, nothing has been reduced or turned into just gay sex. That's true. So,
yeah, not yet. I mean, we can give her at least like the a praise that like she doesn't advocate for sex.
Everybody who passes that bar is decent.
I guess
is a person.
Yeah, he's a human being with a brain and a heart. Yeah.
It's animated sitcoms, and there's also a reason these shows are getting multiple seasons compared to other shows. It's because that's just one of the staples of the sitcom genre. It's fast, easy content, and it can be done incredibly fast. Friends had 10 seasons. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, 15 seasons.
Yeah, but we're talking about...
How?
We're talking about...
Those shows had 15 seasons? How?
Well, we're talking about a show that is successful, that the producers say, hey, we're gonna do this again because we made a boatload of money, and it would be retarded not to do that. Whereas the contract for whatever show on Netflix, because Netflix is notorious for starting any show, animated or otherwise, that is popular, but didn't renew it because there's no money to be made because everyone's signed up to Netflix anyway, and they have dozens of other shows or hundreds of other shows that are going on, and they don't know what is relevant to the main demographic outside of whatever their watch time is. So they might have something that's only Netflix available, and they think, oh, that must be the reason. It's like, well, no, not necessarily, because that might be like, what is it, Rings of Power on Amazon. So like people, oh, that's going to be a great show. It's like, well, no. And there's numbers to back that up. So whatever you guys are thinking, just because people aren't watching as much doesn't mean you should keep making it. So is that the mentality? Because it's not about how much advertising revenue you pull in. It's about, is the contract renewed? Do we have enough money to do it?
I'm still waiting for the second season of Avenue 5.
Well, just think of that show. Like, think of Rings of Power. Every minute was $1 million gone.
They could have made more seasons of Avenue 5.
They could have made...
Whoever had that thing made.
They could have made 24 new shows within the span of 1 hour of of one of those episodes. So obviously they don't really care about the bottom line, at least in that regard. They care about, well, can we make money tomorrow? And they have no idea, just because something's popular, whether it's going to work the next season. So
Rings of Power was the hubris of believing that if you just slap the big brand on it, then we will be timeless heroes forever remembered. Yet, well, you will be forever remembered for making that, but not in the way you wanted to. And the thing that I just don't understand, this whole get woke go broke thing has been going for 5 years strong, 10 years if you include the beginnings of it. And how can you then make this ultimate piece of garbage, of burning money? I don't understand it. I just don't.
The business model is very different for streaming, and I'm sure...
How could you not have learned of that?
It's hard to say, because we look at stuff like The Sandman, which some people love, some people are like, meh, and I think most of the adults are like, I don't care.
I hope they never make Transmetropolitan.
Well... I would want to see that personally, but
I mean, by the effects, but that's like saying, yeah, I'd like to see a live action Ghost in the Shell movie that takes care of the effects. But at this point, Transmetropolitan was already very much out there, very leaning in a direction, and they would just push that to the extreme. They would not stay neutral as the actual story did.
If they can,
because it turned in the story, it turned out that the Republican president, he was an asshole. He was called the Beast, but the main character, the investigative journalist, said, "At least I knew you had a code, even though I disagreed with it." While the real villain of the story turned out to be the New Democrat president, who was just called the Smiler. And that was shortly before Obama became president, who looked exactly like that caricature that was made 5 years earlier.
Well, if they can
Hilarious.
Make a live action of Preacher, which I think was a few years back, Transmetropolitan wouldn't be too much of a stretch. So I haven't watched...
It would be massively expensive for the effects and props.
I haven't watched Preacher to say if it's any good, but it was on for at least a few seasons, I thought. So, who knows? Anyway, there's lots of weird comics out there that I think are worthy of putting in different formats, but adaptations are tough because of what happens to them. So, anyway, back to this lady.
Big Bang Theory 11. This also explains all these seasons out so quickly, if not by cutting out all the details and shading that would take up precious time. When it comes to actual character designs, though, I don't know. I wish they were less ugly too. What I think a lot of people don't realize with sitcom-style shows in particular, live action or animated, is that the vast majority of the population treat them like TV wallpaper. Most people don't really watch what's going on to get invested in the plot or anything, it's just used mostly as background noise that you can occasionally laugh at the absurdity of. And that's also why they tend to be standalone episodes as well, with less focus being put on an overarching plot, so that people can just throw on any old episode on screen without being lost. This also tends to be why the ratings for them are so high and why they continually get multiple seasons. It's just easy viewing, and that's all there is to it. Of course, that may not always be the case, and some people genuinely do enjoy them, but that's what I think at least. The second reason for why there are so many is the illusion of saturation. We literally have any show we want available at the click of a button now, as opposed to past generations who either had to wait until an episode aired on TV, or even had to make a day trip out of it to go to the movies. When you have that much choice in front of you, it becomes easy to see how much of something is available. And this is why many people believe that there are so many of the same cookie-cutter type of art style and narrative, because a lot of the time, if you watch something on a streaming service, the algorithm will pick up on that and try to show you more of that same thing. Let's be candid here, almost everyone has watched a couple of episodes of Rick and Morty, so don't act surprised when Netflix starts recommending you Final Space and Paradise PD. Thirdly, we have the assumption that the people who work on these shows don't particularly care for them. And guess what? You're actually not that far off, because if there's any kind of genre you want to start out in when it comes to animation, getting a job with a show that has a bunch of seasons guaranteed and has a simplified, streamlined process is probably the best you can get. And the fact that people try to spin this as a bad thing just because they don't see the value in that particular show don't really seem to grasp that animation is just like any other job. You don't just rocket into making shows like The Owl House, you work on stuff like this where your job security is likely a bit more secure, and then move on to other shows where you can stand to put a...
No, it's not. Everything in media, anything in entertainment is as soon as that product is done, you're done. That's it. If there's some sway with the studio or you know someone that could get you another contract, that's it. There's no lifetime gig. Not in entertainment. I don't think so. All the people I've talked to, even at the studios they will work on multiple shows because those are in production. But if you're working on one project and only one project, that is it. You're not a full-timer. You are a contractor.
Yeah. And some get scrapped on the way because it turns out, oh, damn, this stuff doesn't work.
And these are the ones,
just like many game projects are scrapped in the beginning.
And these are the ones that we hear about. There are so many projects in Toronto. I know a guy in animation. Haven't talked to him for a while, but he jumped around until he found a stable job in animation, and that took a long time. And even then, the projects he's on, no idea what the hell he does. No idea where these things are broadcast, where these shows are shown. I've never heard of them. I've never heard of these products, but they're all for like little kids. So this is not commonplace, at least in Canada. I don't know about States. So maybe the culture of animation in other countries are different, like in France or Japan. But you have to be very specific when you're talking about studios and their production schedule and what products they pump out every day, not every week, not one show that they're known for. It has to be a collection of things like advertisements, kids shows, stuff done for small clients, for minor to mid-range projects, marketing gigs. There's all kinds of weird things they do. So this is not guaranteed, especially in animation.
A bit more passionate climbing the corporate ladder. It's all well and nice to think that every animator is passionate about all projects they work on, but at the end of the day, it's just a job. And some people just want to go to work, do what's expected of them, earn their paycheck and go home. There shouldn't be any shame, and especially not any ridicule in that. And finally, let's come back around to mine and other people's theories of these shows being targeted towards teens instead of adults. So for this one, I'd like to pose a question to everyone. At what age exactly did you first get exposed to shows like South Park and Family Guy? And once you had that exposure, did you keep going back to it from time to time purely because it was everything you were warned against by your parents, only to watch it and think, what are they so worried about? Here's a short...
Parents didn't give a shit, and I didn't care for them anyway, so...
South Park ran at the same time as MTV show here in Germany showed, what was it, Agent Ica.
Oh,
so
really?
yeah. So you can guess at what time of day that ran. That's not where most children are awake.
Yeah.
for a reason.
Yeah, this is Adult Swim. This is Nickelodeon. This is all the old stuff. 10 at night at least. That Cowboy Bebop came on, I think 10:30. So yeah, no, it's just anime wasn't as mature or wasn't as acceptable as it was nowadays.
Yeah, lots of stuff we had running of that type. There was there? Golden Boy ran for a long time. It ran on repeat.
Yeah.
Every day. These 6 episodes that exist, every day, one of them, or 2 even.
I loved it. It was great.
And people kept watching it because it's just so hilarious, and in a way, it is cute. Yeah, I don't know.
I keep remember that girl, the English translation of her BMO baby. Like, okay. Oh dear. That was the episode where he outran a girl on a motorcycle with his bicycle on the highway.
Oh, for some reason, Lupin the Third was also running in that time slot, like past 11 p.m. And they could have shown that much earlier, if you ask me.
Yeah, Lupin was fun. It's always the weird, quirky moments with Fujiko. Like, okay.
But that's the Japanese humor. They were never much embarrassed about that. They had it always normally integrated. Look at the original Dragon Ball anime.
Oh, jeez.
It starts out with these jokes, but in the most innocent way you can imagine, because Son Goku is just a kid. He doesn't understand these things.
He still doesn't understand these things later.
Same in Ranma. It's just innocent, and in the one that comes to mind that is more raunchy in that regard is Shinchan.
Which one?
Shinchan. You don't. It's a really ugly anime. It's like it's drawn. It feels like it's drawn with crayons.
I know that. There's gotta be a CGI version of that.
How do you make that into CGI?
Easily.
That sounds atrocious. And because the style, the drawn style, it has a charm in itself, but it's imagine it like being the South Park of Japan, maybe, but without the politics.
Or the funny.
Yes.
Right, anyway,
I would agree. Didn't strike a funny bone with me.
She's just not zeroing in on the topic I wanted her to talk about, so I'm just sort of sad. I'm like, oh, it's kind of a waste of a video, but we're almost done, so 3 minutes, not bad.
Short story time from degree. We were given an representing the BBC. When my group came to present ours, we were told that our pitch felt like it would only appeal to a very young demographic, and that the BBC had run some statistics on what precisely children were watching and found that children as young as 8 years old were regularly watching Rick and Morty. And this was back in 2016-17, so you can only imagine what those statistics look like today. The fact of the matter is, if children have access to something, they're gonna seek it out and they're gonna look at it, because that's what children do. But what this can end up feeding into is that studios and companies will pick up on this, so the cycle just kind of keeps going with them catering to this demographic, knowing that it brings in consistent viewership, even if it's not the exact...
I don't think that's how Rick and Morty makes its episodes. The producer goes, is this selling? Yes, we're going to keep doing it. Not who's watching it. It's how many people are watching it. You could argue, oh yeah, we're going to sell toys, but who cares? Look at your demographic for the week. Who watched it last week? Mostly adults. Okay, what do we sell? Whatever we can find.
And I just realized, because I come from a different time, got into the internet early, so all of this just mingles into one thing. Kids today aren't constrained by time slots anymore. So yes, she's right. They will have easy access to it
as a streaming service.
They don't need to. They don't need to stay up to after 11 p.m. to watch the raunchy stuff.
Video on demand, I suppose. Yeah, no, there's all kinds of services that you can get to watch whatever you want whenever. You just have to be slightly tech savvy and you're good. So, and kids these days are, so no big deal. How does that fall into play with her argument, though, that this is what creators are going to be doing? Because everyone's watching any show at any time of the day. either streaming or on demand or downloaded. Like, how do you track all that and say, oh yeah, we're going to put ads in there? It's like, not necessarily. You could license a show and then it's up to their advertising for that streaming service. So the marketing aspect of entertainment for animation is a bit different than it used to be. It's no longer going to DVD or to VHS. It's, can we make it? Who's going to buy it from us? Not, we're going to make money in the VHS bin at Blockbuster or something like that.
Viewership. Definitely one of those people who think there should be a bit more regulation to make sure that kids don't stumble across things they shouldn't. But the thing is, with stuff like streaming accounts and TikTok and things like that, it truly is only a matter of time because gaining access to these things is so easy. And after a certain point, responsibility has to fall to parents and guardians to determine when is a good time to expose their children to certain things.
No smartphones
in
for
my
kids.
humble opinion, 8 years old is
This is
obviously way too
irrelevant.
young to be watching Rick and Morty. Please check in with what your kids are watching every once in a while, for God's sake. But yeah, overall, while I can respect the reasons why people don't like these particular shows, I believe that there is quite a bad case of misconception going on. What many view to be an overwhelming saturation of certain archetypes in adult cartoons are actually just a genre within the medium that gets largely misrepresented as being the face of it, not only by people from the outside looking in, but by its own viewer base too. And by that extension, a lot of people seem to believe that these issues have only recently started developing, when in fact, cartoons have been very adult and inappropriate in nature from the very beginning. As we said at the start, there are many good adult animated series that don't fall into this genre or these tropes. Castlevania is probably one of my favorite adult animated series of all time and is able to stand out as a series with a gorgeous art style, compelling characters, and an engaging narrative. Yes, it contains gore and sexual themes because it's Castlevania.
No, all it has is is good-looking backgrounds. The rest is pretentious garbage. The animation is garbage, and the characters, I don't know. I'm not a fan of that humor. The pacing is horrible. It's, oh my god. I showed this to Mike. Mike, are you here? Hello, Mike.
I'm still here.
Yeah, you remember when I showed you frame by frame the animation of that water bucket? How the water came out against all laws of gravity?
Yep.
That was something. That show's animated really badly. Even in the action scenes, it looks more like you just have the storyboard frames and there are absolutely no in betweens, and it's just, oh, let's make swishes so across the screen. So it looks horrible.
Sometimes they do that. There are some actual animation fight scenes that they fully animate, or they have
I think the first time the whip was used, that looked good.
Well,
the other times not. And then there's this one scene, I think it's in the first season, where they're in the archive, in the Belmont archive, and there's a scene with the giant book, and the page is turned, and it is animate that one scene that lasts like, I don't know, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. That is animated like a top tier Disney movie, where it's super fluent. And then it's back to, like, I don't know, 2 frames per second. It's like, what the fuck just happened? What did I just see? Did somebody submit this scene as like, how do I get on the job? How do I get a job? And after that, the money ran out.
There are some animation, like in the last episode or the last season, that's a bit over the top for me. Like this is getting a little too metaphysical, like what's happening with the world and the whips and what have you. But the fight scene with getting into Dracula's castle, like when Alucard turns into a wolf, and that whole action with all the other characters, those were pretty well done. So the fighting with Dracula was very well done. So there are some really good scenes that are animated well,
Yeah.
and there's some that aren't. I admit there are lots of scenes that they just have, it's drama, and they just talk.
And that just don't make sense. Like in the last season, when they start hiding in the castle and barricade the door against the siege, and it just makes no sense how few people are dying. It's just dumb.
There are some.
I'd watch Vampire Hunter D any day over that.
Well, the second
it makes
one.
more sense.
The second.
Yeah, of course, the later one, because it makes more sense It's a more consistent story. It has characters that make more sense. Everything about it is better, and that's a huge Castlevania inspiration, as far as I remember.
Well, I think they're both watchable, and it depends what you like. You want a nice, clean-cut, well-done story, Vampire 2D. If you want a longer, more relaxed, vampire-esque story, and if you're really like the Castlevania lore, which I do, you'll enjoy that as well. They're both good stories in their own right. In their own right, they're different, obviously different settings and different environments, but voice acting is great. Good job with the color palette, and music is really good too. So there's something that you're going to enjoy, even if you don't like certain elements. Anyway, we got a minute left of this girl rambling. I've gotten almost nothing out of her. Nothing.
Yeah, it's at least there's not gonna be a second viewing.
This is true.
But that's part of the... They had to test it out for themselves. Arcane broke records and had thousands of viewers in a chokehold over how spectacular it was. It was very clear that the series was made with passion and love put into every frame, and when Season 2 drops, the hype is only gonna pick up again. And then of course, you still have great shows even within the sitcom genre like BoJack Horseman and Tuca and Bertie. Oh my god, Tuca and Bertie deserved so much better, man. But sometimes shit happens, and that's just how it is. Anyway, that's all from me. Thank you so much for watching, and if you like this video, please...
What a waste. Holy
didn't
crap.
really help.
Nothing.
No, yeah.
She mentioned the Hays Code. She mentioned a bunch of things she didn't like, and kids and parents.
She made a nice little animation for the outro, and that's all the nice things I can say.
Dear Lord, lady, your thumbnail had more effort put into it than your actual script.
She's not horrible, but she went into depth in the wrong part of the
This
topic.
is what happens when animators try to become English majors or whatever the hell she attempted to do with this video. It's like, stick to what you're good at.
Yeah.
Don't argue. Good. That was that. Oh,
Talk about animation quality.
It's always comes like it's kind of comes back to like the Corridor crew when they made that AI generated video, and they. Like, at first I was like, well, this is kind of half-assed, but like I guess it's okay for like a fun like tech demo. And then the guys entirely made it into that like, well, this is gonna change animation forever. Anyway, let me use this prompt engineer and like steal all these aesthetics from Vampire Hunter D and generate these frames. Okay, fuck you. Like this wasn't as outrageous. It's just like she's rambling. She's rambling so much. Like she doesn't like really think through like how to put together a script for a video. Like make a point first and then write something around it.
Anyway, I'm on Streamlabs. I don't know what I'm reading. I missed the joke. So someone is finally chopping vegetables to put into a soup, and the nurses in the hospital are looking at me like I'm crazy. Is it because I'm chopping up a person? Is that like I'm in a surgery? Like, what's happening here?
Where is that?
I'm on the second one from
second one.
Cowboy
Stream memes.
Bebop. Yeah.
Oh.
Sir, we are proper gentlemen, and we wish for your daughter to use her hand upon us. Oh, that's nice.
I'm calling the cops.
Baby, can you touch
Must
me
be a
already?
fed.
Hold on, someone said King of the Hill is mid. Is that the new thing? Mid? We all like watching the presidents on YouTube, how they talk in gamer speak.
Yeah, mid.
Everything's mid, no cap, blah, 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 all that sort of nonsense. The bastardization of the English language again the next year. Just changes every year.
But that's
minute.
look, that's just youth speak. That's normal. That has been the case since Aristotle.
Thanks. Now, this was not the exact frame I was thinking of, but this was the one that I bet Mark was thinking of as soon as the video started.
Yes.
I wish I was drunk so I could enjoy the video better. My face when her rant about the Hays Code was completely pointless. Yeah.
Is that the CW Watchmen?
No, but it could very much well be.
I wish. I wish if this was the CW Watchmen.
No. Fingerprints. Kid named Finger. Oh,
I don't think so.
probably not the best way to showcase that. Okay.
La chancla.
La chancla. La chancla.
The fearsome weapon.
The most coveted weapon among all Latinos.
Okay. Well, you want some adult cartoons that aren't meta comedy? Here you go. Thank you. The Max. That was a thing.
Oh yes, right.
Aeon Flux.
God.
That one was weird. I gotta say, Aeon Flux, slow as hell, weird animation, weird characters, and
Was the Max really that good?
The Max was amazing. The comic's better, as it tends to, but the show, which you can watch as a movie, cut together as a movie, it's brilliant. Don't spoil yourself. Just watch it. Seriously, the Max is a thing you've want to have watched.
so
How does that compare to the Spawn show, though? My question.
Doesn't matter. Watch it. Don't compare. Just watch it, for fuck's sake.
So when a Netflix director wants to make a cartoon with the ugly Rick and Morty style, packed to the brim with cringe SJW politics and tons of bad sex and potty jokes.
Shoot that guy.
Well, that's the meme of the guy where they have those three people in the room. There's what should be our next project, and have the one guy say one thing, the other guy says another thing, this guy says something else. They launch him out the window. That's the meme. That's what you want. Shin-chan. Okay, that looks vaguely familiar, but holy hell, did I erase that from my memory?
For a good reason.
Too.
I have a Shin-chan plush that I got by complete accident.
Me politely asking the lady to give me a point. Holy Jesus.
Smosh.
Yeah, that was what was her name?
I already forgot. Let's just move on.
Fionapollo, yeah. Or
Fionapollo.
Fionapollo, yeah. Honey, please talk to us. We'll teach you how to write an essay and stop wasting our time. Pretty much. You could have been talking about tea for the first 15 minutes. That would have been fine.
Oh yes, I love talking about tea.
I would have.
Of course.
She's British. She was talking about the BBC. I was like, oh, that's where that accent comes from. Okay, fair enough.
What do British
Big
know about
black.
tea?
They stole it from the Indians. There you go.
They made it big, all right, but bloody hell, what they put in their tea is just.
Oh yeah, don't have
Ugh.
British tea. It's not. At least don't have the British tea style. I think that the tea is fine. Just what they do to it is.
Milk and cookie crumbles, please.
I like my tea the way God intended, with hot water. So, anyway.
Coffee, on the other hand.
No, that's a whole other ballgame. Guys, thank you. That was a horrible video, and we got nothing out of it, and we wasted all your time. Thank you so much. We love wasting your time and listening to people waste your time.
And we love your bluntness.
Yes, please thumbs up the time waste.
And
Yes.
And today was supposed to be a game night, but apparently we're changing our schedule around. I don't know if we're doing game night anymore. It's up to you guys.
Yeah. I thought I missed the Easter sale and forgot to buy a thing I wanted to play with you guys.
You know, I missed it too.
Next time.
But I have enough. I actually am going through the Frontier on New Vegas, which is a whole total conversion of whatever. And holy hell, was that tank AI just broken? It was complete. It's
Yeah, the entire mod is just no.
What tank version or a Tolkien version?
No, an actual tank because there's no vehicles in New Vegas, right? So they made their own vehicle and they put it in the game. They have to code it their own way. I managed to get through the section by using the kill command. So every time I used kill command, I targeted the tank, and the tank reset itself. It went back to its original path. But every freaking meter, it hit a bump. It's like, oh, I'm going to turn around in a circle. You're like, what? What is he? Stop. So you have to like escort this tank through this war zone. It's like, oh my God, this tank is
Instant transmission tank.
It's hilarious. It just starts spinning around in circles. You're like, this is not funny. It's like doing donuts for no reason. while howitzers are firing off. You're like, okay, this is stupid. Anyway, thank you guys. Keep the sessions coming, of course. Please, something with some substance would be nice. I mean, she wasn't bad, but she was pointless. Whereas the people we get who are stupid or ignorant or biased, they have a goal. They have an ideology. They have a thing they want to sell, and we can critique that. This is just like, hey, the Hays Code. You're like, yes, and ice cream. Like, what? Unrelated topics. So I don't know what we could have gotten out of that.
Matthias, get us some real material right now.
There you go. Yeah. I was more critical of her animation and her Adobe Photoshop skills than anything else. Other than that, I'm sure she's a nice person. She accurately said that Vellum was a bad thing at the first 5 seconds. I was like, oh, this is gonna be great. And
that was false hope, and you know it.
And sadly, that was the best it ever got. So yeah, please better suggestions. And if you get a good suggestion that doesn't get through the voting, contact me, contact Matthias, contact other people. Say, hey, I really want you guys to cover this one because a lot of good videos slip through the cracks. And we need good videos. So please keep them coming and keep on voting. So thanks again. Have yourself a great day. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.